everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the first official live stream. Barry Hawkins Live, I'm calling it because I can't figure out how to say something other than just my name, yet not overcommit. I am stoked to be talking tonight about the first topic, 4 outcomes of effective development process. Because when it comes to software product development, what we do, how we approach it, why we're doing it the way we're doing it, I think all too often we approach the whatever techniques or methodologies that we're employing because that seems like the thing to do based on where we're at, the culture of the company we're in, the social circles we run in. But in my experience, it's crucial to ask yourself, why are we approaching things the way that we're approaching them, and what are the outcomes that we're hoping for? And I would say the first 15 to 18 years that I was using agile, lean, iterative approaches to software product development, I would mostly take the approach or the intended outcomes as a given, like, well, this is the camp I'm in, and so why wouldn't you? But as I began to work in broader, more varied, more diverse settings, I found myself needing to articulate, and of course, before being able to articulate, to reflect on what are the outcomes we're hoping to accomplish? Why are we approaching software in this way as opposed to other options that are out there? So that's what I want to open this live stream with tonight. I'll let folks know. Still working on the format and timing. For right now, it does look like I will target every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific for this format, mostly staying to a 30-minute window where the first 15 minutes focuses somewhat on content, and then the back half, depending on how things play out, focusing on Q&A, what questions people have. And speaking of what questions people have, I'm currently working on having the platform integration cooperate with me. And thus far, at least one of them seem to feel that's debatable. So I will try to address that as I speak to the topic of the 4 outcomes of effective development process. Now, some people may be wondering, why 4? What are these 4? Are they the 4 outcomes of effective development process? Are there more than 4, and you're just going to talk about 4 this time? You're going to talk about more later? How did you arrive at the 4? It's actually quite deliberate that I don't say the 4 outcomes of effective development process, because in the years of applying, but also consulting and coaching with groups, I found that there's a real danger in being artificially precise and artificially explicit. So when you preface anything with the definite article of the 4 outcomes, that sounds like these are the 4 you need. There are no others. These are the 4. You need to have these. It doesn't matter what else you have. If you don't have these 4, you're not doing it properly, which is super unproductive. So I talk about these 4 key outcomes of effective development process because what I've seen over the years is whatever else might be true, whatever else might be going on in terms of your company's culture, where your company's at in its growth stage, if you're going through a hyper growth phase, if your company's trying to get from Series A to Series B to Series C, and you're dealing with those, doubling in size in 12 months, and how do you retain the culture that got you to the point where even trying to get to a Series B or C even mattered. It can be tough to hold on to the things that made you the company that you are, the things that got you here or there, if it's in the past. But also what you know to be just generally a good idea around how to approach software product development. Process, sure, absolutely. But not just process, engineering practices, quality practices, product design and UX practices. If you're in the space of video games, art, effective asset pipelines and content tooling. There are a ton of things that go into it. So the 4 outcomes that I'm talking about are specifically focusing on no matter what kind of software product you're making, no matter what size company you find yourself in, no matter what company culture and at times possibly in spite of the company culture that you find yourself in, I've found that that these 4 outcomes, if you're having these 4 happen, whether you're in a setting where it's fertile ground for agile and lean and iterative product development processes, or whether it's not, like you're the lone bastion of iterative development and transparency and the ability to pivot. Wherever you find yourself along that spectrum, if you have these 4 things, your team or your teams will be much better off than they would be otherwise. So yeah, let's look at those. So of the 4, the first one for me is when you have an effective development process. An effective development process should be helping your teams cultivate, as I try to get out of the way of the slide deck, should be helping your teams cultivate an understanding of their capacity. And what do I mean by capacity? I mean their schedulable capacity. That is, how much scheduled work that has traveled through a queue can they effectively and sustainably commit to in the course of a development cycle, and which is at the heart of development process, really. If you, I know for me, when I transitioned from hardware product development and integration in the manufacturing space to software, one of the most bewildering and anxiety-inducing aspects of that transition was just how abstract and opaque a large body of software development work can be compared to what I had done in the past with manufacturing. And that's it's a big part of what you're going for in a development process is this team of cross-functional individuals, and by cross-functional meaning it's not just one school or discipline of engineering in a team together. Your cross-functionality might just be that, well, we have front-end and back-end engineers, or we have C++ people who deal with our game engine. We have Java or C# or Kotlin people who deal with our platform back-end, and then we have people working in if it's a web application working in whatever flavor of JavaScript framework is hot today, or Unity or whatever templating or some degree of 3rd generation language. I realize I just dated myself with saying that. Whatever they're working in, it might just be that you have engineering specializations, but increasingly for some time now, talking about cross-functional product development means that you have not just engineering, but your teams are comprised of engineering specializations, but also QA, product design and UX, graphic design. If your product has a strong data or data science or AI or machine learning component, you might have a data scientist or other specialists who are embedded in your teams. If you again, I know I talk about video games as an example a lot, and I'll tell you why. At the point that I first began working in a game environment, one of the fascinating things to me was the number of cross-functional disciplines it takes in a team to do anything meaningful to a game. And it really stretched my boundaries and perception and an understanding of just how flexible your development process needed to be, and just how much anyone in that team steward, anyone facilitating that development process, just how focused they needed to be on ensuring that each cross-functional discipline had an equal seat at the table and an equal voice. So in the entire cycle of most of the, so if you think about like the XP's development cycle or Scrum's sprint, I typically, I group those up under the umbrella of batch development processes. When you start a development cycle by looking at your queue of work and saying, all right, based on our velocity or throughput, or if you're just getting started, based on what we think we can do, just getting started, you pull out the first item out of that backlog and you break it down and task it out. And you see like, well, do we have more capacity left? We do. Pull the next thing, task it out, have good conversations across the disciplines. Like, QA person, why are you saying that takes 4 hours? Oh God, I didn't realize that changing that changing 5 lines of JavaScript meant you had to regress that entire part of the site all over again. That's good context. Maybe I'll batch my JavaScript changes up a little more effectively before I ask you to regress the whole site again. In the process of pulling work in, breaking it down, tasking it out together, having discussions, having active in-person discussions, or, over the last year and a half especially, but if you're a distributed team as well, if it's remote over video conferencing, having synchronous real-time discussions over how you're approaching the work, how it's being broken down, and what it takes for each cross-functional discipline to deliver this outcome holistically, so that when you come to the end of the development cycle and the team says this is done, it's really done. It's not, well, it was pencils down on coding this morning before the sprint review, so it should work, right? No, holistically done for every cross-functional discipline it takes in the team to move that idea from concept to ready to go live. That's our definition of done. That's what we're going for. And when we talk about our capacity for pulling work in, it needs to be with the frame of mind of holistic cross-functional concept to live delivery. So, and that's also the reason that we track velocity or throughput. We're wanting to help a team. The intent of tracking a team's throughput and having that rolling 6 cycle or 6 sprint average is to give a team visibility of, hey, on average over the last 6 cycles, you've roughly completed an average of this much schedulable capacity. Because as they have that visibility, it can inform directionally their commitment in the upcoming cycle. Now we'll have another session one night on a detailed look at cycle planning and how that interaction is meant to be. But I'll resist the urge to go deep on that right now. But generally, tracking throughput, tracking a team's projected to completed ratio. That is, how much effort did we project that we could complete at the start of the cycle? How much did we actually complete? And similarly, having a rolling 6 cycle average of what is that ratio? Is it hovering somewhere around 1, meaning that we roughly complete how much work we thought we could accomplish, or does it tend to trend well below that? or well above that. If it's well below that, why are we perennially overcommitting to work and thinking we can complete way more than we actually can? Or if it's really high, that is the ratio of what you complete. I just reversed that. If it's way low, why are we completing way more than we project? Or the inverse, why are we completing way more than we project? That is, why are we committing to such a small body of work and doing so much more? Is it because we have a fear of what that commitment implies within our culture? Is it because when we talk about things as a group, we tend to feel uncomfortable or insecure about being held to a given number of hours on a task? So we end up incrementally inflating every single task, and then it turns out once we get going in the development cycle and we're moving along, it's like, well, that actually wasn't so bad. Well, cool, maybe we can pull more in and pull more in and pull more in. Well, if that's happening cycle over cycle over cycle, then that says something. That's something for us to talk about and have a discussion about. As we undertake our development cycles. All right, so that's the first one: cultivating an understanding of the team's capacity. What's next? Building cohesion. The second key outcome of effective development process is that it should help this cross-functional group of people with their different skills and perspectives. It should help them build cohesion as a team. The development process has some part to play in this, but additionally, sorry, just checking to see if I can get the social platform to come alive. There we go. All right, we'll keep an eye on that. With the team as a group, you want them to have. A team should not feel like they are a random assemblage of persons thrown together to be fed tasks. They should feel and believe that they've been assembled as a team because they have an explicit charter over a part of your product ecosystem that's important, that's easy to understand and understand its boundaries. That is, this is what we're doing. There are things outside of us, but this is the thing that we do. And they should also feel that every skill that's been mapped and made a part of this team is here for a reason and provides value, and as such should have an equal voice and seat at the table when we're talking about work that's way far off and having very high level conversations around what we believe the level of effort and implementation approach should be. But additionally, as those really big chunky items, which are way down in our backlog, as they travel up our work queue, and we're having those, subsequent passes and iterations on a given outcome, that each of those disciplines feels listened to, valued, and heard as we're talking about, well, this is getting closer. So we should probably break, right now, this is just a big old thing. Maybe we should break it down into several things. And as we break it down, do the QA team members feel like they are being heard in how we break down the work, so that it's not just optimized for engineering throughput, but for overall team throughput, so that as these outcomes flow through the team, the way that they're packaged and broken down are in the best possible way, also for product design and UX, also for QA. If you have infrastructure, team members, also, bundled and broken down in ways that optimize for their throughput and involvement. The more cohesive a team feels, the safer they're going to feel having candid and courageous conversations with one another. And what do I mean? Candid and courageous. Okay. By candid, I don't mean like the weaponization of feedback that seems to be far more prevalent than we would like for it to be these days. Not that, but when a given team member feels like we're getting off track here, or our insecurity or the degree of uncertainty about this one piece of work is causing us to frame all of it as being way larger than it is, and that's not really the case. Feeling safe, feeling psychologically safe, bringing up that potentially awkward topic and saying, "Hey, I'm just as concerned. I'm honestly just as scared about taking this thing on as I feel like the rest of you are. But I think we're also letting that fear and anxiety or that uncertainty get the better of us. And I think we need to feel safe in taking a step back and saying, all right, how can we slice this? How can we break this thing down? How can we pull forward the most uncertain things? What spikes might we identify? What technical and architectural and design discussions might we actually put backlog items in for, so that we actually have some amount of capacity reserved in the upcoming development cycle to really have a thorough architecture and design discussion that's a valuable outcome that's going to inform the eventual delivery work in 2 or 3 sprints from now, because we'll have really thought through the complexities and implications and dependencies in delivering this new and unprecedented piece of work. And we'll additionally have had time to reach out to the dependent teams that we need to work with on this to ensure that they understand our piece of this puzzle, but also in exchange, that we understand theirs. The more that people feel comfortable, the more that they feel cohesion as we are a unit, we are in this together. We are evaluating and discussing how we approach delivery together, and we're committing to work and reflecting on it together as a team. That's a more cohesive team. That's more effective development process in my experience. Now, the third key outcome of effective development process. This can be a tricky one. Preserving agency. And by agency here, I mean the voice of each individual in the team when it comes to how the team decides to approach a given outcome, the level of effort they assign to it, how complex or effort intensive they feel that it is or is not. This is, it's interesting. Preserving agency is one of the most crucial aspects of effective development process. It's also one of the ones that I see most often inadvertently sabotaged through good intent. And so what? All right, Barry, what do you mean? You'll sometimes see engineering managers or team stewards say, well, when it comes to sprint planning, just myself and the tech lead, we actually plan the sprint. We do backlog grooming. We put story points on the stories, and we break them down, and we task those stories out, and we assign them to people because we don't want them wasting their time sitting in a meeting, planning the sprint or grooming the backlog. And that seems honorable, right? Sure, you want them focused on implementation, but here's the thing: when you do that, when the backlog is groomed and the story point size or the level of effort is assigned by the manager or tech lead, that actually does remove agency from the team in a couple of ways. One, challenge yourself. Ask yourself that the next, if you do that, the next time that you're grooming the backlog, when you come to the team and tell them, so I said that this, so for this item here, I said that this was 5 story points. Say it the way you always do, but attempt to subtly read the faces and the body language of the people on your team. and see if when you say, so I gave this a 5, see if you sense any discomfort or anxiety or frustration in the faces or body language of the team. Because here's the thing, you may feel like you're really doing the team a favor in assigning that point value, but there's a chance that you don't know what they feel, what they, how hard or easy they think a given type of work would be. And heaven forbid, if you're the functional discipline leader, if you're the engineering manager, for example, and you're saying that something's a 5, the chance that, or an 8 or a 13, I don't want to get hung up on a 5. Next thing you know, people say, Barry Hawkins says all stories should be 5 points whenever possible. No, not that. Whatever the size is, that if it's being assigned by someone other than the team through healthy, open discussion, there's a really good chance that you're assigning a size that maybe freaking the QA person out, or maybe freaking the UX person out because they're realizing, oh dear God, the degree of design or the number of user journeys that I have to validate and ensure that we didn't inadvertently break are massive here. And I know that's not apparent to this engineering manager, but I'm also not comfortable because, because face it, well, anyway, often the one who speaks on behalf of others is the he, but this person has said this is a 5, and now for me to challenge that, for me to open that up, now I'm going against the lead, and I'm going against someone who's a manager. What does it mean to go against this manager? Are they also my manager? Because we lump everybody under that functional manager because they just have the most people on the team. You have to be really careful that you're not inadvertently removing or taking away agency from people on the team. Why is that? Well, one, it's generally not good. But if I were just to speak purely from a team health and effectiveness standpoint, the natural human coping response to a loss of agency is when you're being told this piece of work, you're going to do it this way and it's going to take you this long, no matter what you think, no matter what you may think. Well, someone's either going to develop a peptic ulcer and have extreme hypertension, or to cope with having no agency and no say in the outcomes the approaches that they're being told to take, and the timeline that they're being told they have to accomplish it in. The way to cope with that is to decouple yourself from the quality of the outcome. And that spells surprise and disaster when it comes to software delivery. Because you could say, like, this is, you all should be able to do this, and they don't fight it because why fight it? But then you get to the end of the development cycle, and you look at, well, how many things are carrying over, or how many things did we say were good to go, and we push them out in the next production deploy, only to find, we actually missed a non-trivial amount of regression there, or even the some of the underlying platform code was insufficiently tested, and we inadvertently violated our SLAs, or accidentally charging these people twice, or giving these people free service. So with effective development process, it's important to preserve the agency of every individual on the team, to make them feel like they have a voice and they have a say, and they have the say in how they're approaching the work and what they think the level of effort is. Now, does that mean that we don't challenge one another and say, do you really think it's that big? Or is it just that it's so uncertain? There's healthy discussion to be had, but there shouldn't be an absolute lack of discussion or input, or ability to challenge or ask clarifying questions around a given implementation approach or level of effort. Now, the last one, the last key outcome with effective development process is the way that work is organized to move through the team, and the way that work is batched up or flows through the team, and how it's broken down and committed to, and then how we evaluate that and read that out at the end of a development cycle. The development process should nurture and foster critical thought about team effectiveness. that is not just, well, what did we get done and what did we not get done? And kudos for what we got done and disappointed dad face for what we didn't get done. No, the development process should encourage the team to come together and reflect on, sure, how did our commitment versus what we delivered turn out? But more importantly, how did we do this time around, this time through the cycle, at being a team, at working together as a team? And looking at the development cycle and its outcomes, that's a great starter and an opener to sort of frame the conversation. But talking about handoffs, talking about what one another understands and does not understand about what the other people have to do to deliver the work. Talking about handoffs, maybe a discussion comes up about core hours, or when the turnaround time for pull requests or code reviews. Having those kinds of discussions around what are our agreements as a team, what is our definition of done, for each of us as representatives of our respective crafts. What's the bar that we've set for ourselves, or that our organization has set for ourselves around engineering, around quality, around UX. That's the entire purpose, the original purpose around sprint retrospectives, or just retrospectives in general. If you're in a Kanban or flow-based process, and you have that regular interval where you're coming together and just having that reflection point. But especially in batch development processes like Scrum, where you have that fixed retrospective at the end of the cycle, the intent is again not to praise raw throughput, but rather to reflect upon how do we do it being working together as a team, and also where we identify pain points or opportunities, not just to articulate them and bemoan our fate, but rather to say, this is a pain point, and then ask ourselves, is there an experiment we could identify over the next cycle? What could we try over the next cycle to improve that? And not saying we need to fix the entire organization, but something we could try that would fit within that next cycle. If you have two-week development sprints, what could we do in the next 2-week development cycle to try and improve that? If we're having a lot of build breakages or really horrible merges, how long are folks holding onto their change sets before pushing them to master? If the answer to that question ranges from 3 to 5 days, maybe we commit to, let's at least try daily merges to master, daily pushes to master, and see, does that improve? Have an evaluation criteria, and then when we come to identify that in one retrospective, remind ourselves of that experiment as we start the next development cycle, and then as we come to the next development sprint retrospective, check in on that. This was our experiment. Did we do it? How did it go? Do we continue doing that? Did it not? If we evaluate it and decide, actually, that really didn't help, cool, let's ditch that. But let's also have a conversation about what else we could try. And having that, ensuring that you're fostering critical thought, really reflecting on how are we doing at being a team, and how are we at being effective as a team. It's some of the most real, visceral, continuous improvement. I know, people have loved to talk about continuous improvement for decades. Some of the most viscerally experienced continuous improvement that I've personally been a part of has been in teams where there was that agency and there was that focus and dialogue, ongoing dialogue around how are we doing it being a team. And so those are the four key outcomes: cultivating an understanding of, helping a team cultivate an understanding of their capacity, creating a structure that helps a team build cohesion, that is having a sense of belonging, clear charter, and each team member in each functional discipline knowing that their skill is there for a reason and not as an afterthought or some adjunct, or service role to the other disciplines on the team. Third, preserving agency, ensuring that each individual on the team has a voice, both in how we're approaching, how we plan to approach the work, and also in what we say that the level of effort and commitment would be. And then finally, nurturing critical thought about team effectiveness. That, having the focus be on not just affirmation for getting things done, disappointment for things not getting done, no matter what the cause, no matter the reason, whether it was, valid, healthy reasons or, reasons that indicate a clear need for improvement. Not that, but instead taking a candid and courageous look at how we're doing cycle over cycle and experimenting, committing together to try and improve that. All right, so looking to see if anyone had any questions. Any questions were posed during the time together. Not seeing anything currently. Checking yet. And they didn't have to happen during. You feel free to pose them now, but I'll just do a quick scan to make sure we haven't missed anyone's.